Sean, any update on Darion Kendrick with him leaving the game yesterday?
Yeah, he'll be in the protocol, Gilberto, and he's a guy that I feel like you got to go through the necessary steps, but the early signs are trending in a positive direction, but you can obviously never be too cautious, as it relates to just taking the appropriate steps to get through the protocol.
And how about for the rest of the team? Any other injuries that came up? I know Rob left for a bit and he came back though.
Yeah, he came back, got his ankle rolled up on. It's your typical bumps and bruises, but nothing that I expect or anticipate that'll, affect anybody's game status as it relates to next Monday.
And Sean, it was a weird week or a weird start to the year with the injuries, but what did it mean for you and your coaching staff to see so many guys step up yesterday, especially young players?
Yeah, it was really positive. Like I mentioned, I thought the coaches did a great job, and then ultimately the players stepping in and doing a handful of really good things. I love the response from our special teams as a whole, really in all phases. And then I mentioned a handful of those guys on the defensive side, particularly the back end, that were asked to really step up. Even it doesn't go unappreciated or unrecognized by us. And I know you guys recognize the same thing, just being able to see guys like AJ Jackson be able to step up, do a great job at the right guard spot, seeing Coleman Shelton bump in from being a right guard to the center spot. You see Kendall Blanton come in there on his first play and make a big play, when we end up bringing him in on short notice. And so a lot of guys from the receiver room. You saw Brandon Powell make some plays offensively, obviously Ben Skoranek. And so there was a lot of positives from yesterday. And, that's what it's about is, being able to have a deep roster and when guys are asked to step up, they do that. And I think that'll serve us well in the long haul. Obviously, we want to try to be able to, keep guys as healthy as possible. But when those things do come up, I was really pleased overall with the coaches and the players doing a phenomenal job of not allowing that to be an excuse and just get ready to go and try to find a way to get a win. And that's what they did.
Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
Nick.
Hey, Coach.
Hey, Nick.
Wanted to ask you just about, seemed like last season the offense was a lot more explosive. And what are you seeing from this offense this year? I know it's only been a few weeks, but I'm saying, what have you seen thus far from this offense this year? And what do you feel like some of the areas you want to improve upon as you guys move forward throughout the season?
Yeah, I think the first thing you said is it's a really small sample size. The Buffalo game obviously was a game that we weren't able to really establish any sort of continuity or rhythm, and that was a tough outing for us. Thought against the Falcons, a lot of really good efficient play going up and down the field. Got to be able to finish some of those drives, and we had 3 turnovers that I felt like are all correctable. And then yesterday, you have a couple series that kind of stand out, particularly that 2-minute at the end of the half, and then the opening series to start the second half. But other than that, we were up and down the field. Have to be better in the red area. And even though we might not be, hitting some of those big balls down the field, we obviously missed on a couple opportunities yesterday that we'll continue to try to be able to hit those. But I thought the running game was a real positive, but we can't have turnovers in the red area. You got to be able to do that. And then we got to be able to come away with touchdowns. And, there's different ways to be able to move the football and score points. And that's really all I care about, Nick. I'm not necessarily worried about how we're creating explosives as long as we're efficient, moving the football and scoring points. And I think those things are there for the taking over the last couple of weeks. We've just got to be able to execute better in some of those particular scenarios that I just alluded to. And I do believe that we're capable of it, and now we got to go do it.
And also, too, you mentioned the running game. Obviously, Cam Akers had a great first half, but he really came back in the second half and really made an impact. How have you seen his progression over the last couple of weeks as he continues to get back in the fold? And like you said, between him and Darrell Henderson.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought he really provided a spark on that one drive, getting a handful of tough runs. I thought the other 10 guys did a great job. Matthew carrying out his fakes, getting us in and out of the right stuff. And then obviously the other 9 guys, doing a good job of being able to try to get a hat on a hat. And then he was pressing it and being able to do a great job of getting more than what the play was blocked for. So I was really encouraged for Cam. Thought Darrell had some good, tough runs. And, and then obviously, a couple contributions where you end up getting Cooper on a good 20-yard touchdown run. So I was very pleased with that. And I thought we were efficient for the most part when we did run the football. We had a couple penalties that set us back and put us behind the sticks, but we were able to overcome it. But thought Cam, I thought that was something that he can really build on. And that looked like the guy that we're all very familiar with. And I was really happy for Cam.
Thanks, Coach.
You're welcome.
Hey, Sean, just was wondering if you could take us in the room a little bit more with Chris Shula and Jonathan Cooley when they were getting those young guys ready to go, and then especially a couple guys who are up for the first time in Grant Haley and Darion Kendrick.
Yeah, I think it's really just been a continuation of everything that they've done since training camp, Jordan. Getting guys ready to go. We try to create as many competitive situations and scenarios as possible. And the one thing that I think as it relates to Grant and DK in particular, it's not too big for those guys. Grant's always been a guy that I've been a huge fan of since we got around him of the last couple of years, just with his instincts, his feel, his short space quickness, his toughness that I think you guys have seen when he's got an opportunity to play on special teams. And then DK is a guy that he's played in a lot of big games, whether it was at Clemson or at Georgia. He's got a swagger, he's got a confidence, a fearlessness, and a toughness that I think guys feed off of. And I thought that was on display with both of those guys. But you can't minimize what a great job Jonathan and Chris and Lance Schulters. Obviously, Raheem has a huge influence on that group as well, Jordan. But I also think the leadership from the players, whether that's Jalen as from a cornerback spot, or even you look at Nick Scott, Taylor Rapp, and even though Jordan Fuller wasn't playing yesterday, his leadership is certainly felt just in that room as a whole. And guys didn't make any excuses. We had some weird kind of things occur as far as how those injuries came about, but nobody flinched, nobody blinked, and those guys played a really good game and did an excellent job of helping us secure the win.
And then a bit of a random question, but in terms of the 2 touchdowns that you guys scored, the looks pre-snap, different things coming out of those looks pre-snap in each play, but looking very similar pre-snap. What do you remember when you first sort of had the light bulb come on for you, where you noticed back in your career how many different things and how dangerous it could be if you have that illusion of simplicity, or you have those things that you can do, those little twists that you can put into plays after the snap?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just been a combination of whether it's coaches, ultimately it's always about the collaboration of the coaches, and then your previous experiences and environments you've been a part of. And when I think back to the short amount of time that I've been doing this, Jordan, the one thing that I feel certainly blessed about is that I've been around some of the best football minds and very good core, sound, foundational philosophies that are in alignment with creating conflict for the defense, or vice versa, the defense to the offense. And I think in a lot of instances, those are very similar. And the one thing that always is true is the good players make those things come to life. And I thought our players did a great job. You talk about the timing on the touchdown to Cooper, outstanding sell by everybody else. Great job by Allen Robinson being able to kind of secure that left side of the defensive structure, where Wilson probably didn't even really realize where the football was before Cooper was about 5 yards out from scoring. But the timing, the execution, that's a real credit to the players and then the coaches being able to provide that clarity. And then I think on the second run, on the touchdown run for Cam, it was an outstanding job again with the timing, the rhythm of it. And then, what else can you say except for he's a war daddy with what Ben Skoranek did leading up in there, isolating on a very tough physical linebacker to be able to spring Cam, and then for Cam to be able to have the toughness, the contact balance to be able to finish, when he gets probably contacted around the 6-yard line. But ultimately, it's always about the players. And then I've been really fortunate to, number one, be around great coaches here. And then number two, have some other great exposure to special coaches with a sound foundational philosophy that is in alignment with what you see reflected in a lot of good football around this league.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome.
Stu?
Sean, along those lines, when you're looking at the run game, thinking about, introducing the jumbo packages in December last year, and now the wrinkle with Ben at fullback, at what point do you determine that something like that is needed to help the run game? And on top of that, what made you feel like, Ben at fullback would be something that would help?
It's a good question. I think it's kind of something that is always, one of the things that we try to work through as coaches every single week, Stu, is what's the best way to take advantage of our players and different things that we can present based on their skill sets. And, last year it was what we felt like what we needed at that time. I'm sure that this won't be the only thing that ends up being a little different, way of trying to accentuate our player skill sets, whether that be personnel groupings or using certain players to create the illusion of that personnel grouping, even though you might be in, what is typically an 11 personnel type of look. And so like I said, it kind of goes back to collaboration, but it takes the players to be able to fit. And you certainly can't do that unless you have somebody like a Ben Skoranek that has the toughness, the physicality, the overall football IQ and intelligence to be able to play a bunch of different spots, because he's playing receiver. He's playing fullback in a lot of those two back looks. There's certain plays that we ask him to do some of the roles that are similar to a tight end. And it takes the player, number one, and then, creative coaches that have an open mind of different ways to be able to utilize guys. And that's a real credit to our offensive coaching staff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rick.
Hey, Sean, Matt Stafford didn't have a touchdown pass for the first time since he joined you, and he didn't top 300 yards receiving. But was that low-key one of his better games he's had for you? It seemed like he made a lot of really difficult throws, had a couple touchdown passes dropped. And obviously you don't have any concern about him, but after he throws 5 picks in the first 2 games, was it nice to see him come back with a game like that?
Yeah, I thought he's played really 2 good weeks. I thought he's played really well for the last 2 weeks, Greg. I think we kind of talked about, obviously, the turnovers against Atlanta that end up being a big talking point, but kind of break them down and you isolate and how do we learn from it. But I thought he played a really clean game. I thought he had great command, great control, thought he saw the field incredibly well. And like you mentioned, there's a couple opportunities for that to be a little bit different narrative, but ultimately, that quarterback position and what we ask of Matthew, he does so many things that maybe even don't show up on the stat sheet that are such a great reflection of what a stud he is. And really pleased with his overall performance. There was a couple plays that not many people in the world can make. And yes, to answer your original question, was very pleased with his performance. And I think what we've realized, especially over the last couple of weeks, is that the stats don't even begin to tell the total story. It is about winning the football game. And in a lot of instances, I thought he led us offensively with a chance to be able to score 35 points, but we didn't. We scored 20, but within the framework of what he could control, I was very pleased with Matthew, and and that's what we expect because he's a great player and have all the confidence in the world in him.
Gary.
Sean, why do you think it's been tough for you guys to win at Levi's Stadium, and what do you think you guys have to do to maybe change that this week or next Monday?
I think the main thing is they're a really good football team. They've done a good job. Which year do you want to talk about? I mean, we could talk about all those different games, but I think at the end of the day, what it boils down to is they've played well. They've made the plays in crunch time. And I know you got to be able to ask those questions, but I think the ultimate thing that's really important for us is each game is its own separate entity. They've always been a good, tough, physical team that has great players, great coaches in all 3 phases. And that's why we've always had such respect for these guys. And I think there's, just a little bit different story, but we know that this game is going to be different than the other ones. And we've got to be able to show up, play well in that 3-hour window or 3.5 hours, however long it takes. And that's what our focus and concentration will be solely focused on. No different than when we had to play them for the 3rd time last year.
And then I know in the off season and going into the season, you're obviously focused on your team, but did you anticipate, in any way that you might see Jimmy Garoppolo again this season? And why do you think he's been able, to enjoy some pretty good success playing against you guys?
Yeah. Number one, you never wish injuries on players, but you also just seen it from an outside in perspective, you hope Trey Lance makes a full recovery, but you also know that, man, when he stayed on the roster, he's such a really good football player that is definitely, been outstanding for them. They've won a lot of games behind his guidance and leadership. And I think he's a really good player. I don't think it's like he's only played good against the Rams and he's never played good against anybody else. I mean, just look at his career record when he started for the 49ers since he and Kyle have been together in 17. And it's a pretty good movie for those guys. And so he's a really good football player. I don't know if you ever really get too far ahead of yourself, but if you would say that I'm shocked that Jimmy's in this position, no, I'm not shocked. I feel terrible that Trey ended up hurting his ankle, but that is a part of football. And fortunately for them, they had 2 big-time starting caliber quarterbacks on their roster, and now that's where Jimmy's in a position to be able to lead their team. And I know they have a lot of confidence and swagger with him at the switch.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sarah.
Sean, you've mentioned a couple times over the last 2 weeks that you kind of realize that there are no style points for how many points you win a game by. Not that winning wasn't the most important thing to you always, but has there been a mindset shift for you in how you're winning those games and the only thing that matters is getting that win?
It's a good question, Sarah. I don't know that it's a mindset, maybe a little bit. I don't know if I'd ever call myself mature though, but I think the biggest thing is an appreciation for how difficult it is. Now, that being said, I don't ever want to minimize the standards we have for playing good, efficient football throughout 4 quarters. I still think that our best football is, we haven't begun to see that. I want us to play at a higher clip throughout the course of 4 quarters, but I don't want that to minimize what's the best way to play the game to win the game. I think what I've gotten a better appreciation for, just through your experiences, whether it's, learning from the people you're around, being around the players, is that there's different formulas. And it's really about what's the best formula to win as a team, not necessarily trying to pile up points or prevent people from scoring, but how do we play our offense, our defense, and our special teams against the opposing opponent in the best way, given all the circumstances and scenarios. And I thought that was reflected in some instances yesterday when you look at it, specifically our defense doing a great job of, hey, it might have been where, man, that's a lot of plays to be able to play, and that's a long time to be out on the grass, but we felt like that was a formula that was conducive for winning the game. And then we got really stout and toughened up in the red area that prevents some really long drives where your plays are at a minimum offensively, where they're only getting 3 points. And that's ultimately how you win the football game. And so I think it's just having a little bit more of an open mindset and mentality to how you do that and how that's reflected week in and week out. And, when you look at the course of the game and the history of this game, I think that's what the good organizations that have sustained a level of consistency over time do. It's never the same exact formula, but there's different ways to find a way to win with your players, with your coaches. And I think that's what we're continuing to learn. And I think that's what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, that our guys have done a great job being able to handle that. And I still think there's a lot left for us to improve upon and continue to figure ourselves out. And that's what's exciting about knowing that you got 14 more shots at this guaranteed.
Do you think winning a Super Bowl has helped you find that place?
I think every experience, I would say this, I'd like to think that whether it be, a win, a loss, or if you're ever a part of a tie game, which I actually was when I was with Washington against the Bengals in London, you use every opportunity as a learning experience to be able to, whether that be good or bad. And so I certainly am a big believer that the experiences end up being the accumulation of your perspective on things. And you've heard me say this before, like repetition is the mother of learning. So I think the more experiences and the more games that you go through, if you have the right approach and a good kind of, after action review procedure in place, then I think you can learn from it. And those things have certainly helped. I wouldn't say it's exclusive to what last year entailed, but I think it's more about just, using every single op as a chance to be able to learn and grow. And that's what we try to do.
Dennis?
Coach McVay, do you ever run out of amazing things to say about Aaron Donald, or can you ever run out of great things to say about Aaron Donald?
No, it never gets old. I think you can't find the appropriate ways to articulate, the great things, Dennis, is usually what it is. That's why you've heard me talk about before, when people ask me about Aaron, it's however great you think he is, he's even better than what you think, no matter how highly you think of him. And so for him to have his 100th career sack yesterday, in the manner at which he's gotten it done, with the attention that's paid to him week in and week out, going into 3 games into his 9th year in the NFL, is it's why it's one of the reflections of what makes him so special, because of the way he can impact the game. And what people don't talk about is, you're getting that kind of production, but in spite of the attention that he has to still be able to produce, to me, is what's as amazing as anything else. It's why I think one of the best things that reflects his greatness is how well, and usually the guys usually play their best around him because of the way that he elevates their performance and gives them some special opportunities based on the attention that he grabs up front. But, the answer is no. I never run out of great things. I feel like I'm always trying to find the right great things to say about him.
The follow-up, in your opinion, what drives him to be great?
I think certain people just have an intrinsic motivation and a drive that, really is, they're always filling their tank up. I think that his standards for himself, the type of competitor he is and how he's innately wired, I think that's a special trait that he's probably always had. I think he'd be better equipped to answer it. But I know this, nobody has higher standards for Aaron Donald than he does of himself. And that's pretty consistent amongst any great competitor that's truly driven. You get all these extrinsic rewards, but whether it was, the contracts that he's earned over the course of his career, winning the Super Bowl, he's driven to be great because he wants to be great for himself. He wants to be great for his family, for his coach, or for his, teammates, for his coaches. And I think, that to me is one of those separators where you're just innately wired that way. And I don't think that's something that you can teach or coach. I think you either are or you aren't. And, Aaron certainly is.
Thank you for your time, Coach.
You're welcome.
Wrap up with you, Jordan.
Really quick, I swear. Just wondering, Sean, we hadn't had a chance to talk to you about Van yet. Are you expecting that to be a short-term designation?
Yeah, it really boiled down to, because we've had so many of these injuries, there wasn't any sort of setback. The goal for us maybe was that it would be in a couple weeks. He had been making really good progress, and that's been in alignment. But there's a lot of layers to whether we put a guy on IR or not. That's not exclusive to just that person in particular. But I think when you look at where the bye was going to fall for us, we had to make that decision and designation so that you don't end up restricting his ability to return after the bye. And so that really bought him an extra couple weeks. And so there wasn't any setbacks. That's consistent with what I had told you guys. There was a lot of layers to it, but we do expect that to be short-term. Originally, we're thinking kind of Carolina, and then I don't even know who we play when we get back from the bye, but we expect him to be ready to roll when that time comes.